Hello folks and welcome to another video. In this one I'll be giving you some tips about a trip to Venice. So I wouldn't spend crazy amounts on like premium flights because it's actually only about a 2-hour flight away. Oh, and please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share this video and check out my Patreon as well. So another thing you need to be aware of is the cost of food. So food is pretty expensive in Venice, partially owing to the fact that it's a tourist location, but also to the fact that its location and everything needs to be bought by boat. So I would recommend ideally staying away from the gondolas and whatnot as much as possible because they're a lot of money, about £80 for 2 people. I would also be aware that there are beggars, not tons, but there are some. And if you stand out as a tourist, they will try to get you to give them money or sign up to made-up charities, etc. The next thing to be aware of is there is a ton of walking because obviously it's a medieval city built on a lagoon, so it's got no roads, so you literally walk everywhere. The other thing to be aware of is the ordering system when you go to restaurants. Now, the cheaper restaurants, you can basically order whatever you want. But if you go to a nicer restaurant, they're going to want you to have a starter and a main and probably a dessert or coffee or something. I guess it costs a lot to operate business there. But the food's delicious, so it is worth it. But of course, that will then add up in price. The next thing to be aware of is the fact that it is very, very sunny there and can be at times perhaps uncomfortably warm. So I'd recommend taking light clothing and something like a baseball cap, sunscreen, and a decent pair of sunglasses. There's a ton of museums there, so there's going to be a ton of walking and stuff if you like that sort of thing. And like everything else in Venice, the museums are fairly expensive to get into. For example, the Doge's Palace is about £30 per person. It's worth it though, but it is a lot of money, and that is something you should be aware of. Also, be aware that as it's a European country, a lot of people smoke, and you'll be encountering that quite often here, as well as things like cigarette butts on the floor. But these do get cleaned up quite regularly by the staff. You're going to have to bring your luggage across medieval pathways, although they're pretty straight for the most part. But be careful of that. Maybe choose a trolley with 4 wheels instead of 2, and don't drag it across the bridges because it causes damage and it's expensive to repair. Kind of unwritten rule really for that one. There's a lot of shops and stuff there where you can easily rack up a lot of spending on money. So I'd recommend probably going down the little side alleys and whatnot where you can find tiny little restaurants that won't absolutely gouge you on price. Portion sizes are decent but not huge, so you can get a good amount of food really for what you need for the amount of walking you'll be doing. Like I said, there's water taxis and gondolas and whatnot, but I would personally just choose to walk absolutely everywhere. When getting from the airport to Venice, you've got the options of really expensive speedboats, which is pretty cool, or trains, perhaps good for if you've got a ton of luggage. But my favourite is the water taxi. That was a £30 round trip for 2 people, so not bad. It's about, £6.50 each or something like that. Well, that's a rough translation. So that's not a bad deal. Expect queues at certain times of the day. So perhaps if you go somewhere and you see a large queue, just go away, do something else and come back. You're not going to find a ton of greenery in Venice. There's certain spots that you can see on Google Maps where there are, and there are some lovely parks, but there's not a ton of it, owing to, again, its medieval construction and needing to fit as many people in that small space. You'll find tons and tons and tons of designer shops there. Again, if you're happy to pay £800 for a pair of shoes, more power to you. I'm not personally, but it's nice to look at these things. But I personally wouldn't spend the money on them. There's a lot of smaller shops where they're hand making things like sunglasses, clothing. Glass blowing is a big deal there on the island of Murano. They do some lovely glass stuff. I'd recommend purchasing some of that, support the local economy and whatnot. And have a quick look at places like McDonald's and Burger King because they do some different things that could be interesting to look at. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please remember to hit that like button, leave me a comment, subscribe, share, and check out my Patreon. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.